Good morning and Happy New Year. Good morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Chicago, in person and at home. I'm Cheryl Wegner. I'm president of the Board of Trustees, and I'm honored to lead you in worship this morning, along with Reverend David Messner and Liz Kreslin, our Director of Lifespan Religious Education. The First Unitarian Church has been a home for progressive religion in Chicago and beyond since 1836. The church sits on the western shore of Lake Michigan, south of the Chicago River. We honor the indigenous peoples for whom these are unceded ancestral homelands, as well as the diverse and vibrant indigenous American communities who make their home here today. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation, a community of children, youth, and adults, a people of many beliefs and traditions, bound not by the specific list of things we believe, but the values we share, and the mission to grow our souls and heal the world. Whether you have just stepped into this church for the first time or the 1000th time, you are welcome here. Whether you believe in God some of the time, all of the time, or none of the time, you're welcome here. No matter your race or who you love or how much money you do or don't have, you're welcome here. Okay, will everyone join me in reading our covenant this morning? Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Now will you rise as you're able for our opening song, hymn number 362 in the gray hymnal.
For our opening song, it's actually me. I'll be teaching this song, so you're welcome to rise already. You're welcome to get out your hymnals. It's number 362, and as is our custom here, we are going to learn it together before we sing. For our opening song. And look at this, a non-music professional giving it a shot and leading something, and it's going to be great because we're going to sing together. So let me get us a note. We're going to sing together, Rise Up, O Flame. Let's try that. Rise up, O flame. Now, for those who've heard the song before, as our children have in their chalice circle, we often light the chalice with our children with this song, and something that's cool about the chalice is that it's like the only Unitarian tradition that, like, if you walk into any Unitarian church, you'll see a chalice. And something else that's cool about the chalice is that it started as a practice among our young people. So as we sing this song, ponder on that ours is a church that takes the ideas of our young people and adopts them. That's so cool. Okay, so if we know the song, then we know it goes like up and down, those 5 notes. So we're gonna sing, Rise Up, O Flame. Let's try that. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, by thy light glowing. Show to us beauty, show to us beauty, vision and joy, vision and joy. Let's do it all together once. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing. Show to us beauty, vision and joy. Now let's sing it twice together, all the way through, all together. And then after that, I'm going to keep singing, and if you feel inspired, if you know the song a little bit and you feel inspired to start a second part in the round after we sing Rise Up, O Flame, you are welcome and encouraged to do that. No pressure, you're welcome to keep singing with me the whole time. That sounds great too. And if you feel bold, just go for it. Like, what's the worst that could happen? You make your own version of the round, right? That's the kind of thing we support here. So let's try it. We'll sing it all together twice through, and then follow your heart. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing.
That was beautiful. You all did a wonderful job. Thank you, Liz, for bringing that voice. In many of my churches in the years, that was always the sung response to the chalice lighting right after, you know. I had a music director, I guess, who shaped me, and anything that was said always had a musical response. And so I got very used to this kind of dialogue, this conversation between word and music as a kind of rhythm of worship. So that's something interesting to pay attention to, the way we do that. While we're talking about the conversation between word and music, I want to thank our conversation partner today. One of them, Shirley Trissel, is a wonderful Hyde Park pianist who is here. And she's not Adam. And it's really wonderful that we connected and said, you know, how do we give Adam a day when he's not on that bench? And we said, let's bring in some exciting talent from the neighborhood. And I said, Shirley, what should I tell them about you? What would you most like to share? And she said, I'm just a pianist. So, just a pianist. Humility and beauty are the virtues, at least some of the virtues of this house. Well, today is the beginning of our year. Welcome to 2025. We made it. That feels good. It is also the kickoff of our worship theme this month is story. And so today's service, the genesis of today's service was, Liz said to me, we're beginning our Crossing Paths curriculum, which you'll learn more about, has to do with understanding different traditions, different stories, different narratives, different backgrounds, and understanding who we are as Unitarian Universalists, not as some standalone, isolated idea or community, but in relation to the world in which we live and the communities in which we are long embedded. So that's what we're doing. So today we have 3 stories spread in the service that will be of different character and have different storytellers. So my gratitude to Jean Hester, who's going to bring her voice in storytelling, Liz Kreslin, who's going to bring hers, and I'll get to do the opening one. And maybe in that turn, mine will be the most, will I be the most historical? I might be the most boring. So we front-loaded it because it's history. Mine is a different kind of history, kind of denominational history, I suppose. The thing I want to say as I call us to worship here is the idea that stories, in some ways, are the way we understand identity. And in the world today, we talk a lot about identity, what box you're in, you know, what labels you choose. And sometimes it's important to be able to articulate our own identity by those labels. Sometimes it's important not to have other people tagging us with labels of their own creation. And in my observation, a lot of our public discourse is about that. And it's important in a way. Autonomy, self-determination, self-identification, and recognition of those points of identification by communities. It's really important. But as we think about story this month, I want to shift, at least offer one alternative frame of thinking about our identity. And I'll steal the phrase, we are nothing more than our stories. If you want to know me, you need to know my story. You can't just read the label on the back of the box with me. Oh, I know all about you. Just give me the list. Where's your resume or something? All the labels, it's not that. You got to take a minute and you got to listen to my story, to know me. More than that, can I be explained in one story? So often, as you become a minister in our tradition, you're asked to tell one story again and again when you first start out. They say it's your call story. You say, why do you want to be a minister? How were you called? Tell me about that moment. Tell me about the burning bush. Tell me about the voice from above. Tell me, you need a good story because you'll be asked for your call story again and again. that makes me nuts. It's 100 stories that make us who we are, right? It's 100 stories. It's not like, oh, well, the whole story is this, is I signed up for this glee club, and after that, it all just cascaded from there, and I'm Whitney Houston. I mean, sometimes that makes sense to us from the outside, but it's never the whole story. I want to give you a home assignment, and I'm having this idea that I'm going to start taking the things we reference in church and putting them together as things you might want to follow up on reading during the week that follows. And in this case, it's a thing to watch because it was a TED Talk by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. And do people know Adichie? And she's a fabulous Nigerian writer. I think she's genius. And when you hear her talk, I mean, she speaks melodically and beautifully as she writes. And she does this wonderful TED Talk that I really encourage you to listen to, which is about the danger of the single story. I won't ruin it all for you, but she talks about having servants. She's relatively affluent class in Nigeria, and they had servants growing up. And all they ever said about the young man who worked in their house and the mom who worked as their maid was, oh, they're very poor. They're very poor. They're impoverished. They're from this impoverished village. And she got there, and she tells of how she was shown some beautiful piece of art that was created in that family, a basket that had been woven. And she said it was just this collision that these poor people could have made beautiful art. And her reflection, which is deep, which is around how the single story she had been told and rehearsed and again foreclosed the possibility that this family was a family of artisans and not a family of poverty. Is it possible to be a family of artisans and an impoverished family? Well, yes, it is. Is it possible to have 50 stories at once? And so I encourage you to Adichie's work, and I encourage you to think about the many stories, the manifold stories that make up who you are, and the many stories that make up who this church is. Someone comes in to say, oh, we got one story. Let us tell you one story. That'll tell you everything you need to know about this church. I don't think so. I think the stories that tell you what you need to know about this church will include 1,000 stories, more than 1,000, of all the people who've been part of this church, right? It's about stories of the institution. It's about stories of Hyde Park. It's about stories of American culture and transformation. It's about stories of theology. It's about mythic stories, fictional stories, children's stories, on and on and on. How long does it take to know this church? I suggest the question is, how long is your life? And how open are you to listening to the stories? And the more we listen, the thicker our understanding becomes. And the thicker our understanding becomes, the deeper our relationships get. And that's part of what we do here, right? Wider and deeper. Open ourselves to a story we haven't heard before. Let it go a little deeper and understand people and places anew. Understand our faith anew. That's what we're trying to connect here with this idea. Not all of us are going to be enrolled in this Crossing Paths curriculum. But all of us should be in that mindset in this month, because our stories are not only our own, all of our stories are shared in one way or another. They didn't come from nowhere. They didn't involve only us, and they don't influence just our lives going forward in the future. So, welcome to this sacred time. Welcome to this house of memory and this place of storytelling. Let this be a place of storytelling. Come, let us worship together. And with that, I'm going to invite us, I think, to our centering hymn, and we're going to do Spirit of Life together. You'll see the design here, and Liz was instrumental in trying to hit some of these themes, because this is an all ages worship here, that talk about some of our stories and our history and touchstones. Spirit of Life, which is, without looking, what number is it in the hymnal? 123. 123 in the hymnal is Spirit of Life. And this is another thing. If you've been in Unitarian Universalism in the latter half of the 20th century, Spirit of Life is a darn familiar piece. So let us sing it together. We'll be doing the whole thing. No shame in going to the hymnal. Now that I just said, oh, you all know it. So if you don't know it, there's a chance to learn it. Let us sing together. I get the first story, and I committed the primary sin, which I tell people never to do. Don't offer as a prelude to your talk the fact that it's going to be boring. It might not be, number one. Number two, if it is, they'll find out soon enough. You haven't really inoculated yourself against the displeasure of your audience. But here's what I want to do. This is something, I'm calling it an origin story, and it's one of the really familiar ones to many of us because it's a little bit of a magical story. You understand that as Unitarian Universalists, we are at the convergence of two tributaries in this river of Unitarian Universalism, sort of simply put, Unitarianism, Universalism, and we merged in an organizational sense in 1961. Too often, we talk about ourselves only as Unitarians. And these two things are connected and intertwined in interesting ways long before we ever had some organizational affiliation. And I'm more interested in the theological history, the intellectual history, and the spiritual history that these labels apply to. Again, the stories within them are powerful and rich. This idea of universalism, back in the day, and when I say back in the day, we could go back to Egypt, but we don't have time to go back to the 4th century. So I'm just going to start I'll start in the 18th century with our story today. In America, in particular in the 18th century, a sort of prevailing theological code of the standing churches and everything was sort of exemplified by, there was a preacher named Jonathan Edwards. People know Jonathan Edwards? And he was sort of famous. But the most famous sermon he gave, does anyone know what my most famous sermon is? You should learn that. That's one of the things that people will ask you. But Jonathan Edwards' most famous sermon was sinners in the hands of an angry God. And when that's on the wayside pulpit, when that's on the marquee, you have everything you need to know. That's why people, it's most famous sermon, he basically said, we are like held by a thread by God, dangling perilously, and God is angry at us. Okay, that's an unfair, shortened summary of his 58,000-word sermon, but you get the point. We're but a bug on a spider on a bit of web, and God is angry. And so, watch out. Do what? Watch out. Be nervous. Worry. If you can worry more, please worry more. And so this is the general backdrop of kind of 18th century American Calvinist theology, post-Reformation. We'll talk more about that in Sunday school for all ages. Know something about this tributary, because it's revolutionary for us to say, no. A, we ain't bugs. That's Unitarianism. B, God isn't angry. That's universalism. Those two things. Keep that in mind. So anyway, but this is at the day, there was universalism bubbling up in America in lots of places, including there was a sect up in Rhode Island called the Gortonites, Samuel Gorton, and they were cast out actually from the Massachusetts colony because of this, but they were universalists. We had started having teachings in some of the Baptist churches, started teaching universalism, which was a big rift amongst Baptist churches, which were also congregationalist and had notions of soul liberty. And some of the preachers started saying, well, I don't think any of us are going to hell. I think as I read the book, Jesus, the Christ event, all these sorts of things mean salvation for everyone. Okay, so this is this little radical fringe sort of movement happening in all different places. Meanwhile, over in England, there was a preacher named John Murray, and he kind of caught this bug too, this idea in England that everyone gets what's good in hopefully in this life, but definitely in the afterlife. This is a real afterlife kind of thinking. And he started teaching that. He was influenced by a bunch of people, didn't come from nowhere, folks called the Relliites. James Relly was the predecessor there. We don't come from nowhere. But really, he left because he just ran into personal problems. He was lost his family. He was excommunicated for his ideas. He had financial problems, so he was going to have to go to debtor's prison, all these sorts of things. So he was not in a good situation. He got on a boat and came here to America with universalist ideas and just a hope for a better life in this world. So he was, like most of the people who came, had some economic need, some hardship that he was trying to get a better life. Well, in any case, it was going well until he got off the coast of New Jersey, which is a beautiful place. I'm from the coast of New Jersey. It's beautiful. But he hit a sandbar and got trapped there on the sandbar. And he had to go off the ship and go searching for supplies. And he met a farmer by the name of Thomas Potter. Now, Thomas Potter, he's the real madman of this story because he's a guy with universalist ideas living in a field. He's a farmer in New Jersey. Still a lot of farmers there. And on his farm, he built a chapel because he was a religious man, and he built a chapel, sort of a Field of Dreams. If people remember Field of Dreams, build it and they shall come. Build it and they shall come, right? That's another reference. You should watch Field of Dreams if you hadn't seen it. So Potter had his own Field of Dreams, but his Field of Dreams was that he would build a chapel that would be a kind of beacon of universalist truth. And then John Murray comes to the door looking for help with the sandbar, and could I take some flour and some hardtack back? And they get to talking, right? And he's like, you're the one I'm waiting for. John Murray was not looking for settlement. John Murray was not looking for a church. John Murray was looking for food and to start a new life. But Potter says to him, you should come preach in my chapel. Murray looks at us and says, you got no people in your chapel. Did I say a little bacon would be good too and some hardtack? Okay. They go back and forth. Well, Potter struggled to convince Murray to preach. But Murray finally relented and said, well, I have the sense now that an overruling power is operating here and must have brought us together. And so he said, I'll preach, but only if the wind doesn't free the ship from the sandbar before Sunday. Let God determine it, right? God controls the wind. We'll see. The ship stayed stuck. Potter preached, and it's the beginning of the Universalist Church in America. One way we tell it, right? And so why do I love this story? I love it for a few reasons. The really simple one is I love the build it and they shall come. I love the idea that if you're not prepared to receive good in your life, you won't know good when it washes up on your beach. You have to be expecting it in a way. And that's a bit of a paradox, right? What does it mean to expect good that you've never known before and yet predict will arrive? It's hard because it's so easy to say, well, I don't know, I've never won the baseball championship or the hockey championship. We'll get to that, not to telegraph a thing. How would I expect to win the championship? How would I expect to be on the national team? I've never experienced that before, and no one I know has experienced that before, and yet at some point for it to happen, you have to begin to be open to its possibility. And then at some point, and this is what I think is something of our faith, you have to start to grasp it not only as a possibility, but a probability. Oh yeah, it's going to happen. And I think one of the important turns here as we think about this we're in the 1700s here. Remember, this is 1770 when the Reverend got stuck on the sandbar. That it's not so much believe it because there's a providential God who, if you pray enough, will do it for you. But by some other working, what is possible and coming together in the myriad complexity of the universe becomes expressed when we make space for it and when we act in ways that are conducive to it. It's not by magic. Murray didn't walk into the pulpit and say, I came to preach. He had to be convinced. It was a negotiation. It was a process. And most of the good that comes into our lives, a little bit happens by forces, currents, and influences that we couldn't identify, but comes to full fruition because we work to make it happen. And that's the part of the story I love. A little bit of good fortune and a lot of hard work and persuasion amongst people working together. And so that's an origin story I leave with you. It's now your story. You can respin it, retell it. You can change some facts. Most people don't know the facts. I have. And it's a way that you can convey a sense of who we are. And I wish that you go out and do that. Thank you. Now, we're going to take a little break. I'm going to invite you to take a minute, rise in body or spirit, turn to your neighbor next to you, pass a word of good wishes for the new year, a word of peace for the new year. And if there's someone you don't know near you, grab onto them, say, who are you? Okay. as we reconvene. We reconvene with one of my favorite parts of the service, and that's taking up our offering. It's my favorite part for a number of reasons. One, it reminds us of how much we have and to be grateful. Two, it reminds us of our power to create change in the world, lots of ways, including with those resources. And number three, in this church, each month we choose a partner with whom we share the plate. We keep half to do ministries that touch the world from this base, and then we give the other half to an organization we believe is making change in the direction that we dream as well. Our practice, which we're working to grow here, is that the ideas for the partners that we want to share with rise up from the whole congregation. We have a little team that we get together to pick, but when you have an idea for a partner who's making change in the world, you can share it with us and say, hey, why don't we make this one of our Share the Plate partners for this year? We particularly want to think about relationships that endure year to year, relationships in which our ability to connect is not only through financial investment, but through learning about each other and the work we do, and often that we do the work side by side. So you'll find those as the kind of criteria by which we do it. This month, our partner, which I'm really excited about, was proposed to us by Barbara, and so I have asked her to come just say a few words of prelude and to teach you too can successfully propose a partner, and then next week we're going to have special guests from the partner. Let me hand it to you just for a minute to give us a flavor.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so thrilled that this program was selected. The program is called the Austin Scholars Program. It is 50 years old, 50 years old, and the program was created to support students, Chicago Public School students, who attend high schools, originally in Austin, now all over the city. Altogether, they have given out 400 scholarships, and they fundraise, and they also get donations from churches, other Unitarian churches such as ours. It's housed in the Third Unitarian Church in Austin, which some of you may know is on the west side of the city of Chicago, quite near Oak Park. Next week, the co-chairs are coming. One is Charlie Gunn. The other one is 97-year-old Roberta Wilson, who was the original chair of this program. So I'm very, very excited that our church is now going to be supporting, through your donations, our donations this whole month. Thank you.
So this reinforces relationships with Third Unitarian, which is a wonderful partner for us, and also with Chicago Public Schools and the communities we serve. What was that? With a retired Chicago Public School teacher doing it. And so I just want to reinforce that web of relationships that creates success. So with that, today's offering will now be gratefully received.
At this point in our service, I'm so excited to introduce our second story with Miss Jean Hester. And I have a special invitation for, I'm going to keep it to the under 13s this time, to come forward to the front row if you like to, because only if you're 13 and under am I going to invite you, if you have a question about Miss Jean's story, if she uses a word that you don't quite understand or you're really confused, you're welcome to sit on the rug or on the front row, but feel free to raise your hand if something's confusing you and you have a question. The rest of you have to save your questions for Jean later, but if you guys are confused by something, feel free to raise a hand. Miss Jean's story, I'm really excited to share it with you guys from what I've heard of it already, because Reverend Dave was talking about that work that we put in to make good things happen in our lives, right? To receive the good things in our lives. And I think Miss Jean's story has a lot to do with that, with putting in that work to make good things happen and make better things happen. And even when we see problems or unfair things in the world around us, when the world around us doesn't match what we believe in and what we value, putting in that work to see what we can do to make a change. I'll give it to Jean. Thank you. Let's try again.
Can you hear me? I hear me. Okay. This story happened about 54 years ago in Chicago's South Shore community, just after the Fair Housing Act of 1968 was passed. And that act was said that it's against the law to keep someone from living somewhere because of things about them like their race, gender, religion, what country they're from, who is in their family. Before that law, in Chicago, black and white families lived in mostly segregated neighborhoods. So students in the all-black neighborhood schools often did not get the same opportunities to learn as students who lived in the white neighborhoods. I believe the best learning experience for my children would be for them to be in an integrated school where there were children of different races. So my family moved to Markham, Illinois for the suburban experience. Then a mostly white community with an integrated high school, and I thought an integrated elementary school. But it turned out the elementary school was not integrated. It wasn't even in Markham, the school district, in the Markham School District. It was annexed to the neighboring district, which was the second poorest school district in the state of Illinois. My children did not have a good educational experience there. I learned that the best way to know what was going on in my children's school was to be involved in it as much as possible. I became active in the school's PTA, Parent-Teacher Association. I learned that when I saw problems and unfair things in my community, I had the power to make a difference. And this led me to a lifetime of social justice activism in the Chicago area. In 1968, we moved back to Chicago, mostly because my children's father's job moved. We moved to the newly integrated South Shore community. My children were enrolled in Bradwell Elementary School, which was 95% white. When they enrolled, Mitchell was 12, Elliot was 9, and Doherty was 5. I became active in that PTA as well. I met with other newcomers, including Gloria and Ivan Lappin, whose children also attended Bradwell School. I recollect that Gloria and a few others of us may have convinced Ivan to become the PTA president. And if this is not accurate, I'm certain Ivan, who is a member of First U, will correct me. By the beginning of the 1970 school year, approximately 50% of the remaining white families fled South Shore. A lot of them were afraid of or didn't like the idea of including everyone. There was such a large turnover from white to black students at Bradwell that now the 1,500 student population was mostly black. Most of the new students were new to Chicago and new to South Shore. Many of their families had just moved to Chicago from southern states. They didn't know each other and didn't know anyone else in the neighborhood. This all happened quickly. Suddenly, it seemed the neighborhood was all pushed together as strangers, and we did not have a sense of community. I don't know, some of you may have heard of Isabel Wilkerson's The Warmth of Other Suns. In that book, there's a section that tells about this period in South Shore through her view. Soon Bradwell was in chaos. First, the Blackstone Rangers, a street gang, came to South Shore High School. Then a gang-fighting atmosphere crept into Bradwell. Fights broke out in the school. Someone set fire to Doherty's playhouse in the kindergarten class. Elementary school teachers told us the schools did not have supplies. Some teachers purchased toilet paper for students with their own money. By May of 1970, Bradwell was in such turmoil that 20 out of 50 teachers, including the well-respected assistant principal, were rumored to be resigning, not coming back in the fall. 3 of us PTA members, desperate, asked the principal were the rumors true. What actions did he plan to create a safe learning environment in the fall? His response was, oh yes, 20 teachers are leaving, and by the way, I'm going on sabbatical this fall, so I won't be there either. But everything will be just fine. What to do? I don't know what you would do if you knew that 20 teachers were not coming back, and there was already chaos in the school. It was June, and school would close soon, and when it opened in the fall, those 20 teachers would not be in the class. 20 new teachers, no principal to orient them. Hopefully 20 new teachers would replace, and no principal to orient them, and more new students anticipated. At the very least, a discipline plan needed to be put in place, and the teachers required orientation and mentoring to establish a sense of community among the teaching staff so that they could bring stability to the school. Only the returning Bradwell teachers could put such a plan in place, but they needed time to do it. We decided that if we could get the teachers the opportunity to hold a 2-day planning workshop, that would greatly improve the situation, and we set about trying to make that happen. Now remember, in 1970, there were no cell phones or home computers, so no texting, no Facebook community websites. There weren't even payphones in the schools or the school district office on 71st Street. We never heard school issues reported on the 6 o'clock radio and television news. We did not seem to have many options to communicate to parents of the dilemma. I was one of 3 PTA members who could devote a significant amount of time to the work required to put such a workshop in place by mid-June. Our resources included 1 portable typewriter, our home telephones, and 1 member's old station wagon without seat belts, and possibly a megaphone to ask the parents and community to support us. This is what we did. We joined with a team of 10 concerned teachers and assigned tasks between us. Volunteer teachers polled the teaching staff and received majority agreement for a 2-day workshop during the school week without students present in the building. We made several trips to the District 22 office on 71st Street to beg for assistance. The district superintendent said we could not hold such a workshop during a work week. It was against the law. He suggested we hold the workshop in evening hours or on a Saturday. The district office offered no solution or plan, and we had no awareness of any plan they had for filling the 20 teaching positions during the summer break. Volunteer teachers reported back to us that the teaching staff would not commit to evening or Saturday workshops. So the workshop had to take place during the work week. What to do next? Would the parents of 1,500 students voluntarily keep their children home for a 2-day workshop? How could we reach such a large number, including the many parents new to the city and the community who did not attend PTA meetings, if they even knew the meetings existed? How could we reach the many parents who were single mothers with priorities like looking for jobs in this new promised land, their new city? We wrote a press release, and surprisingly, local reporters covered the story extensively, saying the issue was newsworthy. We visited parents door to door, stopped them on the street corners, and passed out flyers. We got over 600 parental signatures in support of the workshop. Many said they read about the workshop in the local newspapers. 10 volunteer teachers agreed to plan the 2-day workshop in their spare time. Returning teachers would participate to redesign and implement an academic plan for themselves that would include orientation for the 20 new teachers to the school opening in the fall without a designated principal. We got a commitment letter signed by the principal that the District 20 required, their only support to our efforts. It gave assurance that the teachers would attend the workshop when and if the students were not present in the school. If the students came to school, we couldn't have the workshop. It was agreed that a small percentage of student arrivals could be accommodated. The district gave us a deadline to deliver the letter by hand to the district office. We met the deadline with 20 minutes to spare before the district office closed for the weekend. On the morning of the anticipated workshop, I sat in the school library with my 2 PA buddies and the teachers and the principal and a few reporters. It was now up to the parents of the 1,500 students to keep them home so the teachers could begin their planning workshop, so that in the fall, students might return to a school with some sense of community. I held my breath as the tardy bell rang. I don't know if you have tardy bells today, but we had a tardy bell. Then we heard it. We heard silence. The halls were quiet. Only a handful of students walked through the door. The workshop could begin. The planning workshop took place, and a plan was developed for use in the fall when teachers returned to school. The principal and the district had failed us, but the parents of 1,500 students, 30 teachers, and 3 PTA members took the authority to work toward a planned, safe educational environment for the students.
Wow, it sounds like you did a lot of work to put that all together, Jean.
Yes, we did.
Wow, you really took it into your own hands, right?
Yes,
without a whole lot of help from other people, but with a good response from the community.
Yes, and other people helped. You have to understand that the PTA was small, and a lot of the members worked and couldn't help. So those three of us who could did it.
Yeah, you put together what you could and joined together with others who offered what they could, and it sounds like you really used your resources and your agency to make a difference.
I tried.
Thank you so much for sharing with us about that today, Miss Jean.
All right, so shall I leave?
You all can go back to your seats, and our worship.
And as people move back to their seats, I'm going to transition us into an important part of our service, especially today, the sharing of joys and sorrows. I'm going to ask in perfect choreography, Team Quinn, to move to this area right here, and you can bring the whole team if you want. And I want to open up if there's a joy or a sorrow today that you'd like to, that's important to share. It's important to share. Raise your hand right now, and I'll come to you for a sec. John, was that your hand?
I have both, sorrow and joy. Raising up sorrow for Diane Hughes, Darcy's mother, who passed away yesterday. She was 87. She passed with her husband and Darcy and her two sisters by her side at home, very peacefully. We'll miss her a whole lot. The joy is, before she was rushed to the hospital on Christmas Eve, she got to experience the beautiful choir singing here at First U. We put her in front of a laptop and made her watch. Not made her watch. She enjoyed watching. I was so sad to not be here with the choir because we were in Idaho for Christmas Eve to be with family, and she saw our beautiful service here on Christmas Eve and was awestruck by it. She was a member of the Methodist choir in her church in Idaho for many years, so I'm comforted by the fact that she got to experience that before she passed a couple weeks later.
Amen. Prayers for her spirit. Love to Darcy and to all of you in the time of missing her, time of loss. Anyone else have a sorrow that should be lifted up? Let us hold in our hearts all of those who do have sorrows, who are coping with illness. Now it's part of what we do in church, coping with separation, loneliness, poverty, all the challenges of life. And most of them we don't speak of. And so we make this space to remind ourselves that they're there. There are untold stories of sometimes challenge and suffering. And then the other side, so often there are good things. Why do we remain quiet about the good things too? I'm shocked by that. I find out, why didn't you tell me? Okay, so we're going to do a good thing. We have, Quinn, when did you first come to this church?
I grew up here. I think I walked in those doors when I was 2 years old.
2 years old. Did you walk? Or were you carried? The first thing you did is you walked into church, and now that's been several years. So anyway, we're celebrating something today, and I'm really sad because I don't have my jersey. Can you tell us a little bit about what we're celebrating? Because it's really exciting.
Yeah, of course. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Quinn Edinger. I grew up in this church, and I was here my entire life. I'm a junior at Arizona State University, and I'm playing in the 2025 Winter World University Games, and I'm representing Team USA for women's ice hockey. So I am so beyond excited to have this opportunity and represent my community at the international level and get to have this experience. And this opportunity also gave me the chance to see how many people are behind me, how many people are supportive of me, and how much I'm loved by the community I grew up in. So that's just been a blessing.
Now, some of us are wondering, how can we get in on this aside from ordering the gear? Lisa, what are we going to do?
So I don't know if we can order gear anymore. We had to pre-order these early November, but her first game, well, she has to battle it out this week in New York. There's 3 goalies chosen from across the U.S., and so she wants to be the lead goalie. So she's going to battle it out in New York this week, and then they fly to Italy. Their first game will be Sunday afternoon, but that's 8:30 a.m. Chicago time. So we're hoping to hopefully have a watch party. I'll be over there in Italy, so I won't be able to watch it here. But the first game will be 8:30 next Sunday in the morning. Then I guess 2 days later it'll be around Tuesday morning early, Thursday morning early. Then there are daily games based on where they place. So perhaps the weekend after there can be another big watch party again. I don't know what time, but yes.
Well, stay tuned because I think we could have bagels and hockey next Sunday at 8:30 if all goes well. So watch for the blast and come together and let's support Team Unitarian Universalism. Team Quinn. Thank you for bringing us joy. If it's okay, I'm going to manage our time a little bit, and I'm going to ask Shirley to stay with us. But can we turn to Liz and take your story into then the blessing of our Crossing Paths folks?
Absolutely, and I'll give you the Cliff's Notes version. My story was going to be short anyway, so don't worry. But mine is taking us back. We're going back. We've got the 18th century covered, the 20th century covered, so I'm taking us back to the 19th century with a little story about someone named Margaret Fuller, who was a little girl growing up in the 1810s, about 40 years after Reverend Murray was on the sandbar and preached. Margaret Fuller was someone, she was a Unitarian, her father was Unitarian. She was someone who loved learning. That was like her favorite thing. And now in the 1810s, what most little boys learned, if they got a chance to learn, if they got a chance to read and be educated, most little boys who were being educated would learn about math, they would read Greek and Latin poetry, maybe translate Homer and Virgil. What most little girls were learning at that time was, like, if they got a chance to read, they were probably reading etiquette books and how to host a great party, which is good skills to have. No knocking on being a good hostess, but there's like, maybe we can agree there's only so much that you really want to read about that, and then you sort of practice it, right? So Margaret wanted to learn everything. And her father supported her. He wanted her to be as well educated as anybody, any boy or girl. And so he made sure that she got a chance to read and learn Latin and read the Virgil and translate it, which was very uncommon for women in her day. And she did it. She became as well educated as just about anybody. In fact, when she grew up, the reputation that she got, what everybody said about her, was that she was the best read person in all of New England. Not the best read woman, the best read person in all of New England, and you think about New England has all those universities and colleges. They've got a lot of smart people over there, right? And at that time, they had probably most of the colleges and universities in the country. So if you're the best read person in New England, you're probably in quite a short list for best read person in the country, right? So Margaret Fuller, she did that. She did all that. And she used her wisdom and her knowledge to work for things that were important to her, like advancing women's rights, advocating for women to be respected in their communities, advocating for the abolition of slavery, which still existed in our country at that time, advocating for prison reform, for people who are in prison to have a better experience. So she did all that, but what her real passion was just always learning more, growing more as a person. And she was contemporaries, maybe rivals, sparring partners, maybe buddies. Who knows, with people like Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau. Those were her contemporaries, and they knew each other. But unlike those guys, the universities would not let Margaret into study with them because she was a woman. So what would you do in this case? I think that if I were Margaret and the universities like Harvard that my contemporaries, compatriots were going to wouldn't let me in, I think I would just go home and read by myself and let my reputation stand. Like, I think that seems like a reasonable course of action to me personally, but that's not what Margaret did. Margaret knew that we learn best when we learn together. So what she did was she said, well, you know what? You won't let me into your universities? I'm going to make my own thing. I did read one book about hosting a party, so I'm going to start something called a salon. I'm going to call them conversations, and I'm going to invite only women, and we're going to read all of those same books that you guys are reading at Harvard Divinity School. We're going to read your same gosh darn books, and we're going to talk about them, and we're going to learn them, and we're going to articulate our perspectives. We're going to grow in dialogue together as women and advance ourselves and advance our personal growth and our learning. And that's exactly what she did, and she laid the foundation for lots of women to come. She inspired lots of people, and she can continue to inspire us today. So that is what I leave you with to ponder as we embark on our own learning journey these coming 5 months. So I will go ahead and invite up our Crossing Paths crew. If you're a participant or a teacher in the Crossing Paths class, I'm going to invite you to come forward for a little blessing for the journey. Crossing Paths is our world religions curriculum here. I went through a similar program when I was growing up Unitarian. We believe that it's really important to always be learning more and working to grow our knowledge and our wisdom, and we believe in Unitarian Universalism that world religions have a lot of wisdom to offer to the world, and that we can learn a lot from knowing more about our own tradition and from knowing more about other traditions as well, so that we can be in dialogue with the people around us and to really be part of our communities and integrated together. And in Crossing Paths, one way we talk about that is by talking about mountains. We talk about religions as paths on mountains, because each religion, when you're climbing a mountain, you are going to encounter some challenges, right? Like climbing a mountain is usually not easy. Maybe it's easier. I know we've got some maybe hikers in here, so maybe easier for some of us than others, but it's usually not easy. Usually you encounter at least one challenge as you're trying to climb a mountain. And so that's kind of like life, and religions see that, recognize that there's challenges in life. And each religion has a little bit of a different perspective on those challenges and a little bit of different perspective on those ways that we can meet those challenges, on the solutions. And that's why in Crossing Paths we say that we are learning about the many mountains and the many paths that are out there for us. And so we are going to offer you all a blessing on your embarking on this journey, the next 5 months of learning about our religion and then about other religions. I'll hand it over to Reverend Dave for a blessing, and then we have a little gift.
Let me say a word of encouragement and blessing. Maybe those two words mean the same thing. I've turned my back on the folks out there because I mean this to be a blessing. Cast your direction, so you got to catch the blessing. As you go forth on this journey, may you know that you are already blessed. Blessed with the courage to explore the unknown. Blessed with the energy to join together with people, some of whom are already your best friends and some of whom you don't know yet. You are blessed with an instinct and a curiosity. Oh, that's the blessing I want for you. May you be blessed that the curiosity you have in your gut and in your heart right now to learn about the world, to learn about other people, to learn about what it is to be human, what does it mean to be alive, what does it mean to be in relationship with this community, right? What does it mean to be in relationship with the people you love and the people you don't yet know? The curiosity, may that spark that you have today rise up as full flame. May you take advantage of opportunities. This is one small opportunity. Say, hey, you want to go learn about some other faith traditions? You want to learn a little bit about Unitarian Universalism? You want to hang out at church more? You want to eat bagels with your folks? Yeah. And you said yes. You said yes. And so the blessing I wish for you is that you continue to have a life of openness in which you stay curious and continue to say yes. And when people say, you want to see what I brought for lunch? Oh, what is that? Would you like a piece? Yes. You want to come to my church with me and see what we do? Oh, you want to come visit and have a prayer circle at my mosque? Well, yes, I do. I'd like to learn about, I don't know about that, but I'd like to learn about that. And may that be a practice your entire life. And so the blessing I have for you is for everyone here, because some of you who have already graduated high school, middle school, and high school, bless your hearts, are engaging on that same quest. And when we choose to be a teacher, we simultaneously declare we are a learner, and we declare that we are curious and that we are discoverers. So may you be blessed in your journey. May you be filled with joy, new knowledge, and the tools for a lifetime. Amen.
And I'll leave
can I have
you,
an amen?
Amen. We'll leave you participants with compasses to guide your way on the journey. And it may guide your way back to your seat. And we are so excited to learn with you these months.
Thank you so much. Let's give them a round of encouragement as they recess to their seats using their compasses, should they lose their way. Let us now join in our closing hymn together. This is a favorite, also another favorite in this house. This is Blue Boat Home, a Peter Mayer tune. And so I encourage you to join in. And this will be our sort of our recessional hymn. And I'll see you on the other side. Invite you all to coffee hour.
I feel no motion standing on these mountains and plains.
peace, my friends. Go in peace.